Today we are not here to discuss dreams. We are here to discuss the nightmare that is materializing right before our eyes. The elites in Washington, London, and Brussels have spent the last 3 years selling you a fairy tale. They told you Ukraine would win. They told you Russia would collapse under the weight of sanctions. They told you the West was more united and powerful than ever. But look at what is actually happening today. The fog of propaganda is lifting. And what remains is a catastrophic picture that I and other realists have been warning about for decades. Do you hear that cracking sound? That is not the ice melting in spring. That is the shattering of liberal delusions. The latest reports from Ukraine give us a chilling figure. 40% of Ukrainians are now willing to concede territory in exchange for peace. Just 2 years ago that number was taboo. It was blasphemy. The Western media calls this a shift in sentiment. They call it war fatigue. But do not let them fool you with that soft language. This is not fatigue. This is the admission of defeat. This is the brutal collision between human will and the physical laws of war. Let me be clear about this. No nation wants to amputate a part of its own body. When a resident of the Donbass or a dance studio owner like Ms. Kristina Yurenko says she is willing to give it all up to end the war, that is not a political policy choice. That is the cry of a society that is being crushed. We are witnessing the inevitable result of a war of attrition where material power, artillery, population size, industrial capacity always, and I repeat, always overwhelm spirit and courage. What have we done to them? Look back at our policy. We, the West, have led Ukraine down the Primrose Path, straight to hell. We whispered sweet promises into their ears about NATO membership, about protection, about becoming part of the Western family, and Ukraine with a tragic naivety believed it. They fought, they sacrificed their best and brightest, and now as the harsh reality sets in, as the power grid is obliterated, as cities are turned to rubble, they are realizing that the price of Western protection is national destruction. You need to understand the mechanism of this tragedy. Why is Russia pulverizing the Ukrainian power grid right now at the very moment negotiators are sitting in Abu Dhabi? Why is Moscow raining missiles down on substations while Trump's envoys and Zelensky's team are trying to find common ground? The naive commentators will tell you it is senseless cruelty. Wrong. It is a cold, calculated strategy of coercion. Russia does not just want to defeat the Ukrainian army on the battlefield. They want to turn Ukraine into a dysfunctional rump state. Think like a realist. Putin has no interest in occupying all of Ukraine. He knows the cost of governing a hostile population in western Ukraine is too high. No, Russia's goal is far more pragmatic and ruthless. They want to wreck the infrastructure, paralyze the economy, and render Ukraine a failed state, a massive economic dead weight that the West cannot carry forever. By striking the energy sector, Russia is sending a simple but terrifying message. If you are not neutral, you will not have lights. If you want to join NATO, you will join as a pile of ash. And this is where we must address the elephant in the room, those secret talks in the United Arab Emirates. We see President Trump's envoys, powerful figures from Washington, sitting at the table with Russian military intelligence. What are they discussing? They're discussing the partition of territory. They're discussing the fate of millions of people without the real agency of those people. This is great power politics in its rawest form. Great powers make deals over the heads of smaller states. But here's the rub. These negotiations are too late. We missed the off-ramp. Back in April 2008 at the Bucharest summit, we made the fatal mistake of declaring that Ukraine would become a member of NATO. William Burns, who was then the US ambassador to Moscow and is now the head of the CIA, wrote a famous memo. Net means net, no means no. He warned that NATO expansion into Ukraine was the brightest of all red lines for the entire Russian elite, not just Putin. We ignored it. We were arrogant, and now the bill has come due, not in our money, but in Ukrainian blood. Now Zelensky and that 40% of the population are hoping for a trade, land for security. They think that if they give up the Donbass, the West will move troops in, or NATO will provide a security umbrella. This is another delusion, a deadly delusion. Look at the map. Look at the balance of power. Russia launched this war precisely to prevent Western security guarantees on Ukrainian soil. Do you honestly believe that after sacrificing tens of thousands of soldiers, Russia is going to sign a peace deal that allows American or European troops to be stationed in Kiev? Naive. Remarkably naive for Russia. This is an existential threat. They will not stop until Ukraine has completely severed its potential to be a Western military bridgehead. If Ukraine insists on NATO security guarantees as a precondition, this war will continue. And in this war of attrition, time is not on Ukraine's side. Russia has a larger population, a defense industry that has shifted to a war footing, and most importantly, they have core strategic interests here. For the United States, Ukraine is an important concern, but it is not vital. For Russia, Ukraine is a matter of life and death, and in a fight between a party that sees it as life or death, and a party that sees it as politics, who wins? History always has the answer. We must also face the truth about American decline. Why is Trump's team rushing to negotiate? Why the urgency? It is not out of charity. It is because Washington is beginning to realize they are bleeding to death in the wrong war. While the real enemy, the only true peer competitor, is rising in the East, China. We have thrown hundreds of billions of dollars into this, hollowed out our own weapons stockpiles, and drove Russia into the arms of the Chinese. This is a geopolitical disaster of the first order, a strategic suicide. People like Victoria Nuland, Anthony Blinken, and the liberal hawks thought they could bleed Russia dry without spilling a drop of American blood. They were wrong. They have.